Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to another episode of Capping the Card, where I'm going to go through all 12 races on Saratoga's Saturday card, highlighted by the Grade 1 Alabama. I'm going to give you my top pick and my top value play for each of those 12 races. But before we get to that, make sure to press that like button and subscribe to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel. We have a lot of great content for you this week. For instance, we have Rajiv Mirage joining me to talk about the Alabama Stakes as well as the Lake Placid Stakes. So you can get that kind of specialized stakes analysis on the channel. You can also get my conversation with Jeff Bratt from up at Woodbine as we talk about the King's Plate as well as the other graded stakes races on the card on Saturdays. So we got you covered at Woodbine as well. Obviously, we have a lot of great stuff on the channel in terms of live streams, educational videos, and we already have Travers Spotlight videos as well. We're going to have a lot more content coming for you next week as well. Obviously, a big week with Travers. But listen, let's dive into what is going to be a very fun 12-race card on Saturday. And listen, it's Saratoga, so I feel like I should start off with a weather report, okay? We had a bit of a monsoon out of nowhere on Thursday. We knew that there might be some scattered showers later in the day, but it was really coming down on Thursday. Friday looks absolutely beautiful. So if you're watching this Friday, it's going to be a great day. Not a cloud in the sky sort of a day. Really nice weather. Should dry out that track. And Saturday, looking better and better, actually, as the forecast has gotten closer to the day. Overcast, but only a very low percentage chance of rain. No real thunderstorms looking like they're out there, more like just small bands of sprinkles and very light showers if anything comes down at all. So I'm not handicapping for it to be a wet track. I'm handicapping for a fast track, and I'm handicapping for a relatively firm turf course. There might be some give into it, but that's just the nature of Saratoga at this point in the summer. Usually it's not going to be as firm as Gulfstream Park, okay? So I think that's a kind of a way that I'm going to be approaching handicapping it. So let's dive into the 12 races and have some fun doing it. I do want to mention before we get into it, though, next week, capping the card, I'm not going to be doing it solo. David Aragona from DRF is going to join me. He and I are going to go through all of the races for the Travers Day card. So that's going to be a lot of fun. A big thank you to David for joining me for such a big day. Well, let's dive into this 12-race card, and let's kick things off in race number one. $100,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And listen, there's a big name in this race, and that is the number 1 Sansone for Shug McGahee. Now, this is the half to midnight Bisu. Okay, that's going to attract a lot of attention. This one sold at the Keeneland September sale for $1.35 million. You think there's many expectations with this horse? But here's the thing. This horse is not racing to win a 6 furlong maiden special weight race at 2, particularly not for Shug McGahee, who is abysmal first time out. Now, this one has some good looking works. No two ways about it. Would I be shocked if that horse won? Absolutely not. Actually, part of a couple of entry with the Christophe Clement runner, 1A Moment's Notice, who's also 7-5, who I actually thought looked pretty good in debut. I actually think that's the more likely winner out of the coupled entry is the Clement part, but 7-5 and probably going to take even more money. I just couldn't really get too excited knowing that McGahee is the type of trainer who lets his horses run into shape. Clement's horse, I think, is a very good one, but again, you're taking a really short price on that coupled entry. As a result, I decided to go to the number 6, Jonathan's Way, as my top choice for trainer Phil Bauer, an Ohio bred with Joel Rosario aboard. This one is sired by Vekoma. We know Vekoma's been off to a very hot start. 32% first out winners out of this first crop. The Damn Female Drama has also produced a first out winner. This one has some really nice works to go back to. Look at that July 27th, 5 furlong, 59 and 4 bullet, or I'm sorry, gate work. That was a bullet, first of 26. So that one's I definitely would pay a lot of attention to. 4-1, you're getting a little bit more value. Maybe people see the Ohio bred, overlook it a little bit, but the Vekoma is certainly going to catch a lot of people's eye. But I think you're going to get that 4-1 price. And I just think this one at first time out for a trainer in Phil Bauer, who does not enter many horses up here at Saratoga, but is winning 50% of his entries this year and is really has a good reputation at winning first out with 2-year-olds. So just a lot of combinations there to like, I think, with this particular horse. Now, in terms of a value play, I could have gone to the number 7 Social Hour at 9-2. I typically try to go 6-1 or higher as my value play. I do think that's number 7 could really take a step forward. Second start with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. But I ultimately went to the number 8, Tis Freedom, for Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado aboard. My logic behind using this one as my value play is, yes, this one needs to get a lot faster. 55 buyer speed figure first time out. But look who this horse lost to. This horse lost to Showcase. We just saw that horse come back and win the Saratoga Special last week. So that's a very productive race in this regard. Now, Showcase was much the best. That race was 7 lengths clear of the rest of the field. But I just think, listen, this horse could absolutely take a step forward. And it was great to see that race came back so live with Showcase running well. This horse had some issue at the start of the gate, was also on the inside rail that day. I never liked 2-year-olds on the inside rail in debut. Now goes the inside to outside move, goes from the inside post to the outside post. I'm more excited about that. 6-1, a little bit of value, maybe more of an underneath play in race number 1. Well, let's go to race number 2, and this is another maiden special weight race, but this one's on the turf, going 1 mile and a 16th on the inner turf, we should say, and this is for 2-year-olds as well. And ultimately, I went to pretty trusted connections here in terms of Chad Brown and Asbury Park. Listen, this is a horse sired by Frankel, and the dam has already produced another first out winner and has also produced the horse Dude in Colorado, who won the Colonel Liam at Gulfstream Park last year. So this is a productive mare, sired and being combined and merged with a very effective sire in Frankel, and a great sire in that regard. For a trainer who knows how to get them ready, this horse will be able to save all of the ground on the inside rail. Irad Ortiz Jr. is up on the mount. Listen, if you get 5-1, that would be fantastic. I don't know if you'll get 5-1, but I really like this horse quite a bit. The workouts don't overwhelm me, but a lot of times with Chad horses on the turf, they don't really look too overwhelming that first time. What I can tell you is Irad Ortiz Jr. is coming back from a 3-day suspension, and he's going to be ready to roll on Saturday. I think he's got a big day, particularly early in the card. So this is one that I'm going to be looking at as my top pick. I should say it is part of a coupled entry, although the other half of it is an AE, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So something to keep in mind there. Now, in terms of my value play, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to the number 6, Davy Crockett. And this is one also making a debut for Christophe Clement. And, part of my thought process with this horse was you have a sire in Constitution who I actually really like as a turf route sire. I think we think of him as a dirt sire a lot of times, but he's produced a lot of turf route winners over the years. And, he's got almost the same number of turf routers and he does dirt routers. And he's winning 14% of turf route races in terms of his offspring. So I think Constitution, again, a very effective sire in that space. And the dam is by Gio Ponte. And the dam was, certainly a serviceable turf horse as well, although had a little bit more success on the dirt. And this is the first foal out of that dam. So America's Tail. Clement, obviously very good first time out and knows how to get horses ready going along in the turf. So I think that's one that I'm really going to be looking at as a little bit of a value play at 6-1. I also took a little look at the number 7 Royals Pride. The workouts really don't show you much with this horse for Bill Mott, but man, sired by Tabawi out of the Galileo Dam. The pedigree would suggest this horse should want to run for days. Maybe a mile 16th isn't quite long enough. I'll be interested to see how that one runs, but that's one I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on in this race. But ultimately, like I said, I went with the 1 and the 6 as my top pick and top value play in race number 2. Now let's move along on the card to race number 3, and this is an allowance race going 6 furlongs on the dirt, and this is for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares. This is a race that I'm really interested in watching because there are 2 horses in this race that have taken a very interesting route to get here. My top pick is the number 2, Bandita. Now, Bandita debuted last year, January 2023. That would be 18 months ago, okay? This horse debuted 18 months ago as a 3-year-old filly at Gulfstream Park during the championship meet. And she went gate to wire and absolutely crushed a field down there. This is a daughter of Gunrunner for Todd Pletcher, a Rat Ortiz Jr. up. She has not been seen since that race, going 7 furlongs. Pletcher brings her back today. He's had this horse working for quite a while. She's had a lot of really good works. She's had 9 works overall leading up to this debut in 2024. A couple of nice 5 furlong works as well. I just think this one, listen, it's either her or you look at the number 4, Nick Style for Bill Mott. Very similar trajectory, actually. This is a horse that debuted in May 2022, won easily, came back over a year later, about 18 months later, in December 2023, ran again in a state-bred, Florida-bred optional claimer for Ralph Nix, trainer down in South Florida, won by 10 lengths, but has not been seen since December 2023. So we have one horse that hasn't been seen since January of 2023, another one not since December 2023. So, it's going to be, and those are your 2 favorites. So it's going to be kind of a tough, and they both are very similar. They both are speed horses, and it's going to come down to maybe who breaks better and who has that better early speed. I think Rat Ortiz Jr. is probably going to get this horse out pretty effectively and get out up on the front end. But the question is, are these 2 just simply better than everybody else? Or are these 2 potential freaks, etc.? It's going to be interesting to see. Now, if you go, listen, maybe they wear each other out a little bit. Maybe they are, they compromise each other. If you're trying to look past them, a horse that I'm interested in is the number 1, Benedetta, not to be confused with my top pick, Bandita. Benedetta for Steve Asmussen. This is another interesting horse. Debuted at Los Alamitos for Simon Callahan and won in debut, then ran second in the Sorrento behind Dreamfire, then stepped up and ran in the Del Mar Derby against Tamara, or the debutante, I should say, against Tamara and Laurent and some of those horses, and finished well back. It's something that probably went wrong in that race a little bit, and was not seen from September 2023 until June 2024, when Asmussen, now the trainer, takes over, brings this horse to Churchill Downs, $125,000 optional claimer. Horse shows initial early speed, then fades late, loses to a horse named Fibber, who, oh, by the way, we just saw come back and win the Audubon Oaks last week at Ellis Park. So pretty live race to be coming out of. I don't necessarily love the inside rail, but this is another horse with good tactical speed, second back from a long layoff, and I think could show maybe a little bit better form in this next start. The horse that I don't have listed here, that's maybe the more reliable horse, and I even shudder to say that, is a horse like Stop Giggling at 8-1, maybe for Bruce Levine. That he's had a pretty good Saratoga meet. That's an interesting horse maybe to use underneath. But this is a real humdinger of a race, and it really is going to come down to do you like either Bandita or Nick Style? And if you don't, where are you going as an alternative? And like I said, I think Benedetta at 10-1 at least offers a little bit of interesting value as an alternative to those 2 top selections. Let's move to race number 4, which is a claiming race. $40,000 claimer for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going 5.5 furlongs. And yeah, you're getting a sense that Rat Ortiz Jr. I think is going to have a good day. I think he has a lot of potentially live runners early in the card, and that could carry some momentum to later in the card, though I like some other alternatives, maybe a little bit more in those spots. But I'm going to go to a horse here on the far outside, but I want to address a horse, number 5, Hugh, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the morning line favorite at 3-1 for trainer Brad Cox. This is a horse that broke its maiden last time out in a maiden claiming 50. And is now running in a claiming 40 and going to the turf. Over the last 5 years, Cox is only 1 for 15 going dirt to turf with last out maiden winners. So not exactly a winning move for Brad Cox in this spot. Meanwhile, peak earnings for Chad Brown, Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. This horse is dropping down in class. Now, here's an important thing to note. This horse is owned by Klarovich Stables, I should say. Klarovich Stables does this move quite a bit during Saratoga. Seth likes to win at Saratoga, likes to try to get the leading owner award at the end of the meet. Perfectly admirable thing to be aiming for, in my opinion. And so you will see a lot of Klarovich stable horses really drop in class. And this is an example of one who was running against much better allowance company at Monmouth Park. Now Chad brings this horse up here from Monmouth to drop in for the tag. This is a son of Kingman, or daughter of Kingman, I should say, and hasn't really been able to do much against allowance company, has more of a late turn of foot, but I think this one could be, just kind of the class of the field, maybe not running against quite as good a company there. It's going to be my top pick. Now, in terms of a value play, I really like the number 1 at a little bit of a price, Beach Cruiser for Christophe Clement, another horse dropping in class. Granted, it has been running against state-bred, New York-bred competition, but has been running in those $95,000 N1X allowance races. And so has been running against some nice horses, Weekend Rags and Strictly Taboo and, horses like that, Fancy Pants Juliana, who we've seen win, 2 straight races now. So some nice runners there. And this one has maybe a little bit more one pace for a sprint, but has some good tactical speed to get out of the gate. 10-1, I think, is a very fair price on this horse and is being ridden by Dylan Davis. And quite frankly, there is not a hotter jockey at Saratoga right now than Dylan. Flat betting Dylan Davis is returning over $3.50 per mount. I mean, so if you just bet all 97 of Dylan's mounts that he's had at Saratoga, you would almost doubled your money. So he's just bringing home big prices, it feels like, every single day. Thursday, the day I'm recording this, he brought home another $20 plus winner from Mark Cassie and the first-time maiden by War of Will. And so this is, again, Dylan just is a really hot jockey right now. And in terms of how he's riding, I think this one, like I said, dropping in class, actually was running against stakes competition last year down at Gulfstream Park. So, Christophe clearly had some expectations. Maybe it hasn't quite worked out. The horse isn't running poorly. I mean, it's not as if the horse is losing by, 10 lengths, losing by 3, losing by 4. I mean, certainly not what you want to see, but at 10-1, I'm definitely willing to take a shot with this horse in some different wagers. Well, let's move to race number 5 on the card, which is a $20,000 maiden claimer. And this one is going 1 mile out of the ever-popular Wilson Chute. I say that, of course, with a wink and a smile. I know that it is not particularly popular at all, but nevertheless, that is what the race is coming out of. And so let's talk a little bit about this one. Fascinating race, because on a certain level, I'm intrigued by the number 4 Salacious for Jose D'Angelo. So, horse, I'm willing to draw a line through that last race in the slop. And arguably against tougher competition than what the horse had been facing, even though the horse was dropping in for a tag for the first time, had been running against, maiden special weight 32s at Tampa, then steps up here essentially and runs against maiden 75 up here at Saratoga, but a sloppy track. I mean, and again, I'm willing to kind of draw a line through that. That said, I just don't know how good this horse is. Now we're getting a really big drop from maiden 75 to a maiden 20. So maybe something to keep in mind there. A lot of people are going to go to the number 7 McCall. I thought about picking this horse. That would have been 4 straight races I had Irad Ortiz Jr. as the winning rider. Listen, he's won 7 in the day before, so it certainly wouldn't be shocking if he managed to pull this off. But I just couldn't get there with this horse, trained by Linda Rice. Linda has not had a particularly strong Saratoga meet. A lot of seconds, a lot of thirds. Only 9 for 83, 11% during this year's meet. I don't know. Again, the Wilson Chute, kind of a funky setup. And this one going a mile. Now, granted, 2 back at a mile at Churchill Downs ran maybe the best race of the horse's career to that point. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see whether or not this one can revert back to that form. But at a short price, I just wasn't quite sure. As a result, I went to the number 9 Ramses. This is one for Good Magic and for Safi Joseph Jr. Taking the blinkers off. Safi's had a heck of a Saratoga meet. 9 for 22 winning at Saratoga. 41% gets Tyler Gaffleone up on the mount. And this one coming up from Gulfstream Park for the first time had been running last time out against maiden 35s. So a little bit of a class drop here. And again, a horse that maybe is a little one pace, doesn't necessarily have the greatest early speed. It's interesting that Safi's going blinkers off with this horse who hasn't really shown much speed, but to be honest, you have not seen many gate to wire winners coming out of the chute. So a horse that sits off a little bit is not a bad thing. And this one, like I said, took to the dirt, I thought, admirably last time out, finished third against maybe slightly better competition over a sloppy track. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays. But I thought at 5-1, maybe a little bit of value and a top selection. Now, in terms of my official value play in this race, the number 3, Vincetta for Tom Morley. That's the one that I kind of like here. Listen, over 8, and once you start to get to this point, you start to think, well, the horse is starting to run out of chances. Relatively still new to the Morley barn, though. This one was only claimed back back in July 11th. Morley put the horse on the turf, didn't really run that well. Now putting this horse, dropping in class a little bit and putting this horse back on the dirt where I think the horse is ultimately going to be more effective. Gets Flavien Prat up on the mount, 6-1 on the morning line. I don't know if I view this horse as a win threat, although it wouldn't shock me because I think there are actually races going back to last year, or I should say this past spring, Keeneland in particular, that are probably good enough to win this race. So this horse absolutely has a chance to win at 6-1. Morley's had, some success this year, 12% during the meet. And Flavien obviously is one of the leading riders up here in the colony. So I think one that you got to take pretty seriously at that price. Well, let's move to race number 6 on the card. And this is a $45,000 optional claimer for 3-year-old and up New York breds. We love those New York breds. Going a mile and a 16th on the inner turf course. And this is a race that I think is going to have a fair amount of speed. Not a crazy amount, but I think if you go back and look through, the number 4 Laurel Valley is going to send. You'd have to imagine the number 3 Laurel Valley, the number 4 Call Me Harry. Interesting horse for Rick Dutrow Jr. This horse showed a ton of speed last year, hasn't really shown the same type of speed this year, and has faded badly, and particularly last time out, although that was against much tougher company in the Kelso. I'm willing to play against both of those horses, though I do like Laurel Valley a little bit more at 6-1. So I think there's a decent chance that there's a little bit of pace in this race in terms of those two going out up front. We'll see what number 8 Agent Creed decides to do for Tom Morley on the far outside. Manny Franco might try to send with that horse as well. As a result, I landed on Let's Go Big Blue. I was actually really impressed by that last race, which was a second place finish. But if you look, this is a horse that was sitting as close to the pace as anyone that finished in the top 3 or 4. Everybody else that was anywhere near the pace in this race just completely collapsed. And admittedly, Let's Go Big Blue was sitting, about 2 or 3 lengths behind that pace, but if you look at where the other horses that finished around Big Blue, Let's Go Big Blue, were sitting in the half-mile mark. The winner, Hush the Storm, was sitting 11th. The third place horse, Locking Key, was sitting 7th. Better Lucky Than Good was sitting 8th. And Let's Go Big Blue was sitting 4th. And so I thought that was a pretty good effort considering how the pace came apart in that race. And this is one that, like Saratoga as well, for George Weaver. Now, George Weaver, the trainer, has had a lot of seconditis this meet. Only 1 for 27 after last year's Saratoga meet where he was so successful. 8 second-place finishes this year. Jose Lezcano up on the mount. And Let's Go Big Blue, the son of Cairo Prince, has never finished out of the exacta at Saratoga. 2 wins, 2 seconds, and 4 career starts at the Spa. Willing to use this one as my top pick at 4-1. Now, for my value play, I mentioned this horse already, but that's number 2, Lock and Key. I like this horse on the dirt going back to the winter and the spring. And this horse has, I thought, run some decent enough races on the turf as well. Frankie Dettori aboard for Jimmy Ryerson, the trainer. And listen, this horse is going to be coming from a little further back, though. The inner turf course has been playing well to late speed. 54% of winners on the inner turf course this meet have been closing from more than 3 lengths off the pace at the half-mile mark. So certainly something to keep in mind. This is a horse that is going to come with a late kick, but has some tactical speed depending on how things shake out for Frankie. I actually like that this horse is going to be a little bit more inside and covered up before kicking out for home. So I think a 6-1 lock and key presents a little bit of intriguing value in this race. Well, let's go to race number 7 on the card, and this is a much longer race. We're going 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf with $62,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up. And I'm going with a Chad Brown horse, but you're getting a little bit of a price on this one, and that is the number 5 and Catch a Wave, sired by Curlin out of a Scat Daddy Dam mare. And this is one who, I know this one is going through the levels, right? But here's the thing. Whenever I see this like non-winners of 2 or non-winners of 1, non-winners of 3, what have you, one of the first things I do is I look at who's had the least number of chances to get to this level and who's had the most chances. Because if they've had the most chances, they haven't been able to graduate from this level yet. The least chances, they've graduated pretty quickly. Catch a Wave has graduated quickly. Catch a Wave broke his maiden in debut at Tampa Bay, stepped up, almost won a N1X allowance at Keeneland in his second start, came up just a little bit short, then really stretched out to 1 mile and 3/8 and was a little bit behind and just didn't have a very good trip that day as well. And finished 4th that day out of a field of 9, but was well back. Granted, runaway winner that day, True Quality, but still, next time out gets the win with Flavian Pratt aboard. Flavian's back aboard again. I think this one looks pretty tough in this spot. If you get 9-2, I think that's a really good price. And like I said, this one has graduated to this point in 4 races. You look at some of the other horses in this field, 13 starts, 25 starts, 9 starts, 8, another 9 starts, 17 starts, 10 starts, 13 starts, 22 starts. At some point you start running out of chances, 26 starts. So I'd rather take a shot with a horse that's, on the come up with regards to Catch a Wave. And certainly that last race from a Beyer speed figure standpoint, 90 Beyer, very impressive. Now, in terms of a value play, I'm taking a big swing here and maybe putting you on a long shot who, admittedly, it could be not a lot of upside here. We'll see. But Kenny McPeak, the trainer, is one that I'm usually never on the right side of, but I keep coming back to in different spots. And Mendelssohn's March at 15-1 feels like an interesting horse with Julian Leperoux aboard. Horse was in the Grade 3 Saranac Stakes last year at Saratoga against Carl Spackler. Finished 4th that day. Granted, only a 5-horse field. This is one that is stakes placed. Ran 2nd in the Audubon behind Webslinger at Churchill Downs last year. This was a pretty accomplished horse as a 3-year-old, and certainly well-intended and well-campaigned in terms of being put in some pretty aggressive spots. Something went wrong after the Saranac. Horse goes to the bench from September until July. Comes back in July and runs in a $62,000 optional claimer. And it runs at this level, basically. Finishes 10th, but here's the thing. Finishes 10th by 3 lengths. Makes up a little bit of ground late. And the notes are right. The horse didn't make a huge impact. Here's the thing is I'd expect this horse to maybe show a little bit better gate speed this time out. Broke from the far outside that day as well. Not a great spot. It's going to break further inside. I think faces a much more manageable field. Second back from a significant layoff. I'm willing to take a shot with this one. Dam is by Galileo. There's a lot of good turf pedigree here. 15-1. Hey, I'm going to use this horse underneath in some different wagers and see if I can get lucky on some exactas and trifectas and catching a 15-1 or higher ticket there. Let's go to race number 8 on the card, which is 1 mile and 1/8 on the dirt for 3-year-old Nups, N1X Allowance Company. And another interesting race where I really hemmed and hawed in this race. And I hemmed and hawed for a couple of reasons, because you could go to the far outside. You could look at the number 9 Donegal Surges. and you could look at the number 10 Timeout. And on buyer speed figures alone, they make a ton of sense. Okay. Timeout in particular. Timeout ran third in the Curlin last time to Unmatched Wisdom and Corporate Power. Those two horses, oh, by the way, are just running in the Travers. So has been running against exceptionally good company and should like this distance, broke the maiden at the distance, and just came off a bullet workout. The more I'm talking about this, the more I probably should have made Timeout my top pick. But that far outside 10 post just concerns me in terms of getting over, saving ground, what sort of trip that horse is going to get. And listen, I try to beat favorites a lot of times. And you know, Timeout, while I think a worthy morning line favorite in this race, is certainly not an overwhelming one. Donegal Surges, the number 9 horse, is coming out of New York bred stakes competition, finishing second at Drake's Passage last time out. Now, here's the thing. The horses that Donegal Surges finished behind the last 2 times out, Drake's Passage and Rotney, have both come back to run terrible races since then. Rotney actually had his streak snapped of consecutive New York Stakes races victories, but when he finished last in his last race, Drake's Passage looked awful in an off the turf race where he was an MTO as an overwhelming favorite. So it wasn't great to see those 2 horses run so poorly the following time out. Like I said, Timeout, Donegal Surges. Would I be shocked if either of those 2 horses won this race? Of course not. I ultimately went to Brad Cox's Rocketeer at 9-2. Tyler Gaffley on aboard. The blinkers come on, which I think is a beneficial thing because I do think this horse, I don't know about hangs, but it maybe flattens out sometimes. I think the blinkers are going to help. And this horse, I think with the blinkers, is going to be on a little bit more of an upward trajectory. Can pass horses, has shown that ability before. So I think this one is kind of interesting in this spot. You know, finished 4th in the grade 3 Matt win behind Society Man, Houday, and Next Level in a field of 8. So has some talent. Cox clearly thought highly enough of this horse to put him in a stakes competition, and now is kind of putting back down into allowance company. Finished second last time out. I think 9-2 presents a little bit of value in this race. Now, in terms of where am I going to go for a value selection? Well, I'm going to go right next door to the number 7 Game Warden at 8-1 from Norm Cassie. This continues an ongoing trend. Horses that have come up from Churchill Downs have run extremely well at Saratoga. Now, this one stepping up in class. Cassie trained this, got this horse claimed from Saffie Joseph Jr. in a claiming 50 back at Churchill back in May. Ran this horse against N1X Company at Churchill. Didn't really run that well that day. And that was, pretty tough company. A horse like Sun Thunder was in that race. Chopper's Revenge, Mo Fight was your winner. Then comes up here, runs 1.1 1/8 miles against Starter Allowance Company, runs against a couple of horses we're actually going to talk about later in the card, Yo Daddy being one of them, wins that race and really looks good going 1.1 miles, is 3 for 3 in the exacta at that distance with 2 wins. 8-1. I know there's a step up in class. I know that. But that said, I still think there's a lot of things to like about this horse at the 8-1 price. So that's where I'm going to go for my value play. Now let's head on to the first of 2 graded stakes races on the card. And let's talk about the grade 2 Lake Placid going 1.16 miles in the inner turf course. And I'm going to eat some chalk here. And I'm going to go with the number 7, She Feels Pretty for Cherie DeVoe. I just think this one's better than everybody else. I don't think it's that complicated. I think that her 2 losses were in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf by a half a length to Hard to Justify and Porta Fortuna, who, oh, by the way, we've just seen win consecutive Group 1 races, including at Royal Ascot in the Coronation Cup. So, hello, she's pretty good. And then last time out in the Belmont Oaks, finished 3rd by 3/4 of a length to Cinderella's Dream, who I actually think is maybe the best Charlie Appleby horse that he's got right now outside of Baby Silver Knot. But this is a really, really, really good horse. I love the cutback in distance from 1 3/16 miles to 1.16 miles. Love the Caraconti sire up top. And I just think this one, Cherie is a really good trainer. She's cooled off a little bit here, but her and Johnny over the last year have been a really good combination. Johnny Velasquez, the jockey, and I think this one can sit pretty close to the pace and make a run. You'd imagine maybe the number 4, De Regresso, goes a little bit. You would imagine she feels pretty. And then the number 8, Ori, is the real key to this race. That's going to be the speed horse to try to kind of ensure a little bit of a pace. Now, a horse that's going to need pace, but who I absolutely love at a price, is the number 9, Proctor Street, 8-1 for Brendan Walsh and Tyler Gaffney on a board. I always like Brendan, and I always like his horses on the turf. I always like him when he pairs up with Tyler. This one is 2 for 2 in 2 career starts, both at a mile and a 16th. Broke her maiden at Horseshoe Indy, and then stepped up and came up here to Saratoga in an $80,000 N1X optional claimer and won that day over Grayo. She's also in this race, who is a pretty nice Chad Brown runner, and still managed to beat that horse on that day. And then, oh, by the way, the 3rd place horse is one Destiny Star, who came back to win against First N1X Allowance Company just earlier this week. In fact, just on Wednesday. This is a pretty nice horse as well. So, that was promising to see the ability to win that race. And 2 for 2. Now, Brendan moves this one up against Stakes Company. It's going to be a tall task. This horse is going to make a big run late. No two ways about it. It's going to want more pace. It's going to need to work out a little bit of a trip from the far outside. But I think 8-1, you're getting a fair price on a horse that I think has some upside. I know a lot of people are probably going to look at the number 10 dynamic pricing. I get it. The horse makes a lot of sense for Chad and Irad. It is interesting. The big effort was over yielding turf course down at Churchill Downs in the Edgewood. Yeah, we'll see. It's not going to be. It's going to be a firm turf course. It hasn't necessarily always run great on firm turf courses, and was a pretty distant 7th in that Belmont Oaks. A little bit of an awkward start, but I had no real excuse there. Just didn't really fire that day, coming off a very brief freshening. So I just maybe not quite as high on that horse, only 6-1 on the morning line. And we should mention there's actually a Charlie Appleby horse that is jockeyed by Manny Franco. First time Franco is, I think, taking him out for Charlie Appleby. And notable that Flavian Pratt decides to stay on Grayosh, who is the 8-1, I think, tied for 5th choice in this race or 4th choice in this race, rather than going on a Charlie Appleby runner. So a beautiful love, not one of the stronger Appleby horses, coming off an allowance win over in Maidan. But this is one that has not been spotted or has the form that some of his other horses do. Let's move to the headlining race on the card, which is the Grade 1 Alabama. And the Grade 1 Alabama going 1.25 miles on the dirt. And listen, there's no Thorpedo Anna, and that means that the race feels a little bit more wide open. Now, listen, I know people are going to go to number 7, Candied. I get it. If you look at it just purely on form and class, probably the class of this field, certainly the only Grade 1 winner in this field, winning the Alcibiades last year at Keeneland, and then winning the Ladies' Secret listed stakes race at Monmouth 2 back in really impressive fashion. Here's the thing. If you take that 99 buyer speed figure out of the racing form, really her other races fit right with everybody else. She's not an overwhelming favorite, 86, 89, 78. Okay. Those are good numbers, but certainly far from elite. I also wonder whether or not she's going to want this 1.25 mile distance. Candy Ride is a good dirt sire influence, but not a great marathon sire influence. So, it's kind of just average in that spot. And the Dam, Tony Tools, is more of a sprinter and has largely produced more sprinters. So this one likes to come from off the pace. I don't know how much pace there's going to be in this race. So as a result, I'm going to try to beat Candy. Now, maybe that's foolish. It wouldn't be the first time I try to beat a heavy favorite and maybe end up looking foolish, but I'm going to try to get a little bit of a price, and I'm going to go to the number 6, Miss Justify, the other Todd Pletcher horse with Flavian Pratt aboard. This horse just keeps getting better. Really love that last race in the Wilton Stakes. That was an oddly run race. Somebody made a move a little too early, I think, in that race. It's coming out of the inside rail, coming out of the Wilson chute, and still managed to get the job done, coming through on the inside rail. I thought that last effort was really professional. I love that this horse has good tactical speed. The race before this one wired the field going 1 mile at Churchill Downs. Now, obviously stretching out, but listen, you got Justify up top as an influence, and that's never a bad thing. from a pedigree standpoint. This one has a versatile running style. I think it gives Flavian Pratt a lot of options. I would imagine that he's going to make sure Miss Justify is hanging out maybe a length or two behind my value play, which is Chattelis. These are the only two speed horses in the race. Everybody else likes going and coming from mid-pack and further back. And these two, I have a feeling, are going to be able to get out on the front end and largely set their own fractions. And Chattelis with Frankie Dettori board from Mark Glatt is going to set her own fractions. She could be danger if she gets out up there up on the front end. At 8-1 in the morning line, she's a really intriguing play, coming off a really impressive win in the Indiana Oaks. That was her first race in over 7 months. She comes off the bench, ships across the country from California to Indianapolis, to Horseshoe Indy, and then runs a race where she's up on the front end. She's setting some pretty decent fractions, 23-3, 47-2, and they come at her. Little Jamie and Impel both come at her. Little Jamie gets past her, and Chattelis kind of does her best Dornick imitation, digs in, gets back past Little Jamie on the inside, wins that race, sired by Gun Runner out of an Indian Charlie mare. This one should like the distance as well. I know she's never tried a mile and a quarter, but she's won at a mile and a 16th twice. She is a front runner, but here's the thing. When she gets out up front, she has not lost. So she's got a very even running style. There's a lot, I think, to like about her. Love the works that she's had coming out of that last race. Now back with the Mark Glatt barn and has been up here for the last week or so. I think at 8-1, she's really interesting. So I'm going to try to beat Candied in this spot. Listen, she's my second choice. Again, if she wins, I'd be hardly shocked, but it just feels a little bit more wide open. I think another X factor in this race is probably the number 4, Just Basking. This is a horse that actually has won at the distance, won last time out in the Iowa Oaks. Landeros has been pretty ice cold this year, the jockey, but still, it could be a tough one to avoid because we know she can like the distance, but the big issue is she likes to come from way in the back. And I just don't know if the pace is going to set up for her at all in this spot. So, like I said, ultimately trying to beat Candied with the number 6, Miss Justify, and the number 2, Chattelis. All right, well, we still have 2 more races to run after that one, and let's talk about race number 11, which is a $50,000 starter allowance race. And this is another one where I really went back and forth. Looked at the number 3, Yo Daddy, getting the blinkers put on for trainer Linda Rice. Like I said, Linda's not had the greatest meet. Lescano stays aboard. This horse does have a propensity for finishing second. Maybe the blinkers are going to help. I also think this horse ran his best race last time out, and I don't know if this horse will replicate it this time. Horse ran an absolutely huge buyer speed figure last time, which was 11 points higher than the next closest thing the horse has ever run. So can the horse back that up at 3-1? I don't know if I'm willing to find out. There's a part of me that would like to go to the number 4, Who's the King, for Safi Joseph. That said, this horse does have a little bit of an on-off thing on the dirt in terms of one good race, one bad race, one good race, one bad race. I will say this horse ran a big race 2 back at Churchill Downs behind Elephant Ear for Safi. And I did it at 36-1 that day, but really just didn't look good in that starter allowance last time out. And I know there's a little bit of traffic issues, but honestly, there was nothing that should have prevented this horse from running. The horse should have run better than 4th by 11 lengths that day. Not a great effort. 6-1, I just wasn't really willing to go there. And so without those 2 options, I landed on the favorite, which I didn't really want to do, but the number 7, Unlimited Potential, at 5-2 for Mertcan Cardamasi, Junior Alvarado aboard. Listen, this one was, with the Rapoli stables and St. Elias and Todd Pletcher. Very well thought of horse, ran against a lot of big names, and, ultimately really had a hard time putting together. Finally broke his maiden as a 5-year-old at Keeneland. And this is a horse that had just been repeatedly put on the bench for a while and was able to come back as a 5-year-old. Like I said, broke the maiden at Keeneland, stepped up against N1X Allowance Company at Churchill and finished well back. Was no comparison for that field. Then Todd dropped this horse way down last time out. Dropped the horse all the way down to a claiming 16,000. And the horse, of course, just absolutely romped with no competition and just no concern at all, gate to wire fashion. Now, Cardamasi is stepping this horse up to an starter allowance 50. This actually kind of feels like the right level for this horse. And the horse has outstanding early speed, can do the distance. I don't know, like at 5-2, I don't hate that price. And if you can guarantee me that price, that would actually be pretty good. Now, a horse that I'm interested in as a value play here, and this is more of an underneath play, but I really like the number 8 Storming Chrome for Horacio De Paz. This is one who's finished in the money the last 3 times out, all of which have been at the starter allowance 50 level, and at different distances too, has shown, I would argue, really ran the best race, going 1 mile and an eighth, and was second by a head. So I think that last time out, running second to Surface to Air, who's a pretty nice horse, came back to win the next start. I don't know. That one I think is interesting to me. Horacio always gets his horses ready. This one, you talk about an interesting work tab. Back on August 2nd, the horse was 111th out of 111 with a 52-second flat 4 furlong work. Horacio backs that up with a 47-1 bullet work, first to 51 next time out. So this horse has some speed if necessary. I wouldn't be shocked if Luis Saez, who's starting to ride a little bit better up here at Saratoga, it gets this horse out pretty aggressively, taking over the mount for Trevor McCarthy. So that's one at 8-1. Again, a little interested in from a value standpoint. Let's go to the final race of the card, and that is a $90,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old and up, New York breds and fillies and mares, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. And I know people are going to go to the 3 and they're going to go to the 5. The 3 is by Horacio De Paz with Manny Franco aboard. This one's had 6 bites at the apple and it just keeps coming up short. And I have a hard time at a short price backing that horse. The 5 for George Weaver makes more sense at 8-5 on the morning line. Like I said, Weaver at 1 for 27 this meet, a lot of seconditis. I think that was a little bit concerning when thinking about whether I should take this horse up top or not. The other thing to consider is this horse, you wonder how much this horse might have been cranked up for debut. And, maybe there's a little bit of a regression from that first to second start. We sometimes see that for horses that debut at Saratoga, that they debut really good and then they take a step back in their next start. So where am I going to go for my top pick? Well, I'm going to go to a 6-1 runner, number 6 Destiny, Naughty Destiny, I should say, for Christophe Clement with Dylan Davis. We talked about Davis already. This one's coming out of stakes competition. This one most recently ran a New York Stallions Series Stakes, finished 6th that day. Was 3 lengths beaten by Solo Shot and Geopolitics, a horse that loves coming in second. But, was running against much better company than what this horse faces here. Now, coming back from a brief layoff, Clement has Davis up, who, like I said, very hot right now at Saratoga. And, Christophe has not really turned out a ton of winners. But again, a lot of seconditis there. His horses have finished in the money over half the time, well over half the time in this spot. In terms of my value play, I went to another horse that's 6-1 for Charlton Baker, and this one, Barefoot Disco, number 8, at, like I said, 6-1. This one's coming out of a race last time out, finishing behind the number 3 Heart of the Night. But here's the thing. Look at this horse had taken almost a year off in between starts. Now, second start back from nearly a year-long layoff, you'd expect there to be a little bit of natural progression. This horse does like to come from a little bit further back. I do wonder if the horse shows a little bit better tactical speed second start off that long of a layoff. Gets Flavian Pratt and keeps Flavian Pratt up on the mount, which I think is notable. At 6-1, I think this one's a little bit interesting. Maybe I even fool around with this one as a little bit of a top pick as well. But like I said, these two 6-1 runners, I think, present some interesting alternatives to the 3 and the 5, because I think that's where everybody's going to go in this race. Like I said, the 3 has had too many bites at the apple. The 5, logical, but a short price for a trainer who's has a lot of seconditis this meet and, could regress a little bit second start. So just something to keep in mind. All right. Well, we ran through all 12 races and we did it in about 50 minutes, maybe a minute or two less. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure to check out all the great stuff we have up here on NYRA Bets YouTube, from handicapping and betting tutorials, full card analysis to race previews, whether it's Saratoga, up at Woodbine. Next week, we'll have a ton of Travers content. We already have a lot of great stuff up here. We got my top 5 favorite Travers videos. We got my Travers Spotlight as well. So a lot of great stuff next week. David Aragona is going to join me on Capping the Card. I got Acacia Clement joining me to preview the Personal Ensign and the Sword Dancer on Friday and Saturday. So a lot of great content here. So like I said, make sure to press that like and subscribe button. Well, listen, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.